In this video, we're going to talk about how we're going to draw the cubital fossa, as well as the relative relationship of structures that run through this space. So the first thing I like to do is I like to draw a lateral epicondyle and a medial epicondyle of the humerus. So this is going to be our medial epicondyle, this is going to be our lateral epicondyle, and then I like to draw an imaginary line that extends between the two. This imaginary line is going to be the superior border of our cubital fossa. The next two borders, I'm just going to make a triangle here. The medial aspect here is the muscle belly of the pronator teres, forming our medial border of the cubital fossa, and our lateral aspect of this triangle is going to be the brachioradialis muscle, forming that lateral border of the cubital fossa. So with this we have our three borders. We have our superior border, which is the imaginary line between the lateral epicondyle and medial epicondyle. We have our medial border, which is formed by the pronator teres muscle, and we have our lateral border formed by the brachioradialis. Now, while it's important to understand the borders of the cubital fossa, it's also equally as important to understand the relative relationship of structures that run through this space. So the way I like to think about this is that through the cubital fossa, we have a nerve sandwich. We have a nerve that comes down along the medial aspect of the cubital fossa, as well as a nerve that's coming around from the posterior aspect of the forearm, going into the forearm, through the cubital fossa, right underneath the brachioradialis muscle. So the nerve on the medial aspect is going to be your median nerve. So the median nerve running through the arm into the cubital fossa. The one that comes from the posterior aspect of the arm into the cubital fossa underneath the brachioradialis muscle is going to be your radial nerve. And this is the nerve sandwich of the cubital fossa. There are two more structures that run through the cubital fossa that we need to know. The one that is more medial is going to be my brachial artery. And the brachial artery, when it hits the cubital fossa, is actually going to bifurcate into a radial branch and ulnar branch, forming your radial and ulnar nerves. So remember that the radius is on the lateral aspect of the forearm, so that's going to make this the radial branch. And the ulna is on the medial aspect of the forearm, so this is going to be the ulnar branch. The last structure that we need to know that runs through the cubital fossa is going to be a tendon. This is going to be a tendon of the biceps muscle. Okay, so this is the tendon of the biceps. Now, some students get confused as to how do you remember which one is medial and lateral between the biceps tendon and the brachial artery. The way that I remember this is that the biceps tendon is actually inserting into the radius. So the biceps tendon is going to come down and insert into the radius, which is a bone down in here. And remember that the radius is on the lateral aspect of the forearm, so that helps me remember that the biceps tendon is inserting into the lateral aspect of the cubital fossa. So it's going to be lateral to the brachial artery. And with that, those are the four structures that you need to know running through the cubital fossa and their general relationship. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that there is one more nerve that goes into the forearm to supply the muscles and cutaneous innervation that is not included within the cubital fossa, and that is your ulnar nerve. The ulnar nerve passes through the arm, but actually wraps around behind the medial epicondyle, therefore not within the cubital fossa, before it runs down the medial aspect of the forearm to nervate muscles of the flexor compartment of the forearm as well as the hand. Okay, so that is your ulnar nerve here. Right, so going through this quickly one more time, the borders of our cubital fossa, we have an imaginary line between the lateral epicondyle and medial epicondyle, as well as a medial border formed by muscle belly of the pronator teres, lateral border formed by the muscle belly of the brachioradialis. Within the cubital fossa, we have a nerve sandwich, the lateral nerve being the radial nerve, the medial nerve being the median nerve. There are two more structures that run through the cubital fossa. On the medial side, we have the brachial artery, which then bifurcates into the radial and ulnar branches. And then lastly, we have the tendon of the biceps coming down and inserting into the radius. And that gives you an overview of the cubital fossa as well as the contents that we would expect to see.